It looks like you are the dweeb and I'm the cool guy.
Today, the alpha prototype for Show Accurate CardWars is available to play. How to do so will be explained towards the end of the video. But before that, I'll be covering the state of the game and going into detail about the most complex mechanics to hopefully make them easier to understand. I will also introduce a new placeholder setup mechanic, which is the last new thing implemented before this playtest. I set out to recreate the iconic fictitious card game CardWars from Adventure Time. Although if you just like game design, you don't really have to be a fan of Adventure Time to understand or care about any of this. And if you are caught up on the series, I've made tweaks to nearly every mechanic, and while the previous video summarized some of these changes, it's worth paying attention to get truly up to date. First, I made an in-depth analysis video on the episodes featuring the game, and then I got to work. I ironed out the shell of the game and mechanics that we are actually shown. I did work, testing, and revisions. I implemented card types, turns, tags, keywords, combat, flooping, flipping, activating, money, simulated behaviors, and then now, of course, the setup. Before I start covering the rules, I want to clarify in no uncertain terms that this game is not finished and everything is subject to change. There are also many missing mechanics, including elements, lands, hidden cards, research and studying, set collection, doubles tournament rules, and real-life holograms. The currently implemented cards' abilities, phrasing, and art may also be changed while the playtest is up. Even everything I'm about to describe in this video is not carved in stone. With that established, we can move on. So, for the rest of the video, I'm going to loosely go over all the current rules to give an understanding of what the game actually is. I will not just be giving vague explanations and teasers. Overall, CardWars is an unbalanced and chaotic card game with a lot of player freedom and room for emergent gameplay. And a board. The cards played influence the creatures and structures on the board, with the ultimate goal being to destroy all of your opponent's cards. Although there are a few restrictions, you rarely net gain cards, so you need to be careful not to empty your hand and leave yourself vulnerable. The setup more than functions, however, is primarily just made so that you can actually get things in place to play the game itself, which is what I'm mainly looking for feedback on. I'm going to go over it step by step since it's not something I've covered in a previous video. All of the early steps to setup are taken care of in the Tabletop Simulator mod, but you have to still assemble a deck and place your creatures and structures on the board before you can actually play a game. While there are 86 cards in the game currently, you will shrink this down to around 24 semi-random cards to actually be using each game. First, you separate the creatures and structures from the entire deck of cards, which is done for you already in the mod. Then, shuffle the structure and creature piles separately, draw 6 structure cards and place them face up. You then pick 3 that will be your starting structures and set those in front of you in a pile. Then you may select any of the 3 leftover structure cards to be discarded. The ones you do not discard will be added to your deck later, so place them aside in a pile. Next, do the same for creatures, except only select 2 creatures from the set of 6 drawn and choose what, if any, to discard from the 4 remaining ones. Then, take all the remaining cards, not including the ones you discarded, set aside or selected as your starting ones, and shuffle them together. This includes the spells and artifacts. Once shuffled, draw 22 random cards face down and shuffle them together with the structures and creatures you placed to the side to be added to your deck. This is the deck you'll be playing with, draw 5 cards, and you are ready to begin. If you wish to include random behaviors for your creatures, which I would recommend, then after drawing your hand of 5 cards, draw 7 random unpredictable behavior cards face down and then shuffle them into your deck. These cards will allow your creatures to sit, fall down, and think about their circumstances so hard that they get sad, which is quite frankly a perfect addition to any game. Once both players have set up like this, you are ready to play. Setup now established, I'm going to roll over some of the major concepts. CardWars has not only cards, but a board state divided into 4 lanes and 2 kingdoms. Cards sit in the lane below the land that their corresponding piece is in. The cards that exist here are in what is called a player's active area. There are 4 main types of cards, which are collectively referred to as playing cards: creatures, structures, spells, and artifacts. Creatures can be moved around the board and generally have the most stats and information, like attack, health, keywords, tags, and unpredictability, although when explained piece by piece, these things are not actually super complicated. Structures are somewhat similar to creatures, but cannot move and generally cannot attack or retaliate. Most structures have passive abilities that affect the land they are built on. Spells are instant effects played and then resolved. They are quite powerful as reactionary tools and work just as much like a defensive deterrent as they do utility tools. Artifacts are cards that are placed onto creatures or structures that give them new passive or floop abilities. Artifacts are discarded along with the cards they are attached to. Creatures and structures can exist in various states, the neutral state being idle, where the card is able to do stuff. When exhausted for any reason, the card is now out of juice until the start of your next turn. Cards become exhausted when flooped or activated. Flooped is a term for exhausting a card in order to activate its unique ability, which is detailed on the card itself if it has one, and activating is the term for exhausting a card to make it fight. Structure cards and creatures with a worker keyword can also be flipped, which makes them vulnerable but gives you money. Although this is only relevant to the optional economy mechanic, but I personally recommend using all of the optional mechanics. Otherwise, why would I put them in? Creatures, structures, and artifacts sometimes have keywords, which summarize common functions or abilities those cards can have, like flying, range, or immobile. All cards also have tags along the bottom, which don't mean anything on their own, but denote what type of card it is and are used for cards to refer to one another for various reasons. Next topic. The turn structure is sort of elaborate, but many of the phases are small and you will pass over them quickly. The phases are reset, where you return your cards to idle, then you discard and draw, which is self-explanatory. Afterwards is your main phase, where you can play any cards, flip cards you have in your active area, even if you play them this turn, and move creatures in your kingdom. Then, if you want your creatures to fight, you begin your battle phase, where you can activate your creatures to put them in a state called battling and move them into lands with enemy pieces. After the active player declares all actions in their battle phase, the opposing player gets a reaction phase, where they may play spells and floop or activate their own creatures to battle back. The order of operations here can be a bit finicky, admittedly. After the opposing player takes those reactionary actions, combat resolves in all lands where there are battling creatures. Combat is probably the most complicated mechanic, so I will go into detail about the overarching mechanism. Battling is a state that creatures are in if they were activated on this turn, which means they will participate in / initiate combat in the land they are in if there are enemy cards present there. Non-exhausted structures are also always considered battling. All lands where there is at least one battling creature and an enemy card have combat. When combat happens, both players add up the attack values of all their battling cards present in that land and deal the damage to the other player's cards there. Damage dealt is distributed by the player receiving the damage between all battling cards they control there. This distribution does not need to be even, and if applicable, they can even make cards take no damage at all. If a creature or structure takes total damage equal to its current health, it is killed. If all players' battling cards are killed and there is still excess damage, the opposing player may distribute that excess damage between non-battling cards there if any are present. Once both players have distributed all the damage received, combat is then resolved in that land. This explanation is very similar to the one I wrote in the rules, however I hope the visualizations help it make more sense. Things also get a bit more complex when ranged attacks and targeting exhausted cards come into play, but hey, Card Wars is supposed to be complicated, right? I mean, I could use that as an excuse, probably. After combat, you have an auction phase, which is skipped if you have no money like a dweeb or aren't playing with the economy, like a dweeb. Which segues into explaining the optional mechanics. First is the economy. With this edition, you have to worry about money gain and the advantage of an economy. When playing with this, structure cards and creatures with the worker tag can be flipped to generate money. However, it also leaves them vulnerable until your next turn. This money can then be spent during your auction phase to force a blind auction for the card on top of your opponent's deck. The winner of the auction can pull the economy into their favor, which allows them to draw cards from their own deck by spending money. This mechanic introduces the only way to net gain cards currently in the game, so it is extremely valuable despite not being directly tied to a win condition. However, even when you are playing with the economy system, it is not a primary focus of the game and only comes up if you plan around it. Although honestly, in its current state, I feel like it could have its relevance bumped up a little bit more. Now, unpredictable behavior. My favorite mechanic and arguably the most unique mechanic in this game. Unpredictable behavior cards are shuffled into each player's deck, and when they are drawn, they cause one of that player's creatures to perform inane, semi-random actions that make the game a bit more unpredictable. The creature that's targeted is determined by its personalities and how unpredictable it is. This mechanic can easily be ignored by simply not shuffling these cards into your deck if you find this sort of thing frustrating. Okay, all of these explanations I've given for rules in this video gloss over small details and outlier cases, which are covered in the actual rules PDF, which is super exciting to read, although I actually like reading board game rulebooks if they aren't structured or worded terribly. So I hope mine is not, otherwise I will look like a hypocritical fool. There will be no notes section today, because I will instead be talking about the playtest, which is now public. The Playtest is a downloadable mod for Tabletop Simulator on Steam that will be available for 3 weeks in total. The first week will be members only, and the following 2 weeks will be free for everyone, after which the playtest will close until the next one. Our Discord will be a hub for Rules FAQ, which I will respond to as quickly as I can, and there will be an explanation there and in a community post on YouTube about how to get access to the playtest. For now, these instructions will of course be members only. If you'd like to become a member, you just have to click the join button on our channel page. This button does not always show up on mobile. Becoming a member will obviously give you access to the playtest right now, but also comes with these other perks, and of course supports the project immeasurably. Getting to this point would not have been possible without our members. Thank you so much, you guys. While major revisions to the game will be held until after the playtest, small changes like balancing, card wording, and phrasing will be changed throughout the playtest if necessary, in which case you can simply re-download the mod to get an updated version. I will make posts about these revisions so you know when and what things change. The final announcement is that this Saturday, there will be a Card Wars tournament for members held in our Discord server. Anyone can watch, and we will be answering your questions about the game. If you're interested in participating, please join our Discord and let us know. Thank you everyone for watching and your support on this project. Getting to this point is nothing short of exhilarating. You guys know the drill. Like, subscribe, leave a comment that isn't too mean. At worst, put a neutral comment down there. Oh, and drop in positive keywords like radical, excited, and trome.